Peace, my people. You're tuning into I Must Be Bugging, where Black, gifted, and otherwise neurodivergent folks celebrate our special flavors. If you've ever questioned your perspective in a world built for the masses, welcome home. I'm your host, childThe, and I appreciate you joining me on this journey as a late-identified Black, gifted man. Together, we'll rewrite the script on neurodiversity by celebrating our differences, challenging the status quo, and breaking free from old narratives that label us as deficient. In each episode, we'll explore the stories, experiences, and of course the curiosities of Black gifted adults and other neurodivergent people who are underrepresented or unidentified in a world where normal can also mean harmful. So continue with me on this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and acceptance. I Must Be Bugging is creating safe spaces, sparking conversations, and making sure our voices are heard. All right, welcome to another episode of I Must Be Bugging. I am your host, childThe, and I am so excited to share with you this episode. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Joy Lawson Davis. I'll talk a little bit about who she is if you're, hiding under a rock in the gifted community. But again, really excited to share, her knowledge, her insights, and, her work. I was telling Dr. Davis before we started recording that she's a key part of my gifted discovery journey because, a few months ago when I was really just in the curious phase of whether or not I even belonged, I found her through a website dedicated to a movie that's yet to be released, but it's called The G Word. And I saw her on there, and I saw, honestly, I cried, and I saw her talking about this experience, not just as gifted people, but how it relates to us as Black people, and that just touched me dearly. And so since then, I've been trying to find a way to get back to actually talking with her, and never at the time did I imagine that we'd actually have an opportunity to talk on a podcast. But so grateful, that she's here. And so before we jump in, let me just give you a brief read of her bio, here. So anyway, Dr. Joy Lawson Davis has a distinguished record of scholarship in the field of gifted and advanced learner programming. Her specific expertise is diversity, access, and equity in programming for students from underrepresented populations and culturally diverse students with other exceptionalities. Dr. Davis holds 2 graduate degrees in gifted education from the College of William and Mary in Virginia. She's a highly sought-after speaker, professional learning trainer, and consultant to school districts and organizations across the United States, the Middle East, South Africa, and the Caribbean, sharing multiple presentations at professional conferences during her career with her message of equity and excellence in education. Dr. Davis is also core faculty member at Bridges Graduate School for Cognitive Diversity in California and Johns Hopkins University School of Education. Dr. Davis is an award-winning author of 6 books. Her most recent books include Bright, Talented, and Black, a guide for families of Black gifted learners 2.0, as well as Empowering Underrepresented Gifted Students, Perspectives from the Field, and Culturally Responsive Teaching and Gifted Education, Building Cultural Competence and Serving Diverse Populations. Dr. Davis served for 5 years on the board of directors of the National Association for Gifted Children, serves on the editorial boards of 2 professional journals, and on the board of trustees for the Roper School in Michigan. Dr. Davis also served for 5 years as the state specialist for K-12 gifted programming in Virginia. As one of the nation's premier experts in gifted education, Dr. Davis is frequently called upon for interviews, podcasts, to serve on expert panels and advisory councils to advocate for increased equity in gifted education services. Dr. Davis is the recipient of the 2022 honorary member of the Colorado Academy of Educators of the Gifted, the 2020 New Jersey Hall of Fame Award from the New Jersey Association for Gifted Children, the 2019 Lifetime Achievement Award from supporting the emotional needs of gifted children, and the 2019 Alexia Baldwin Special Populations Award from the National Association for Gifted Children. Recently, Dr. Davis was also awarded the Association for the Gifted 2023 to 2024 Tag Diversity Award by the Council for Exceptional Children. Join me in welcoming Dr. Davis to the podcast. So again, my name is Sheldon Gay. My pronouns are he and him. I am a 41-year-old Black man with curly hair. I guess some would say, light skinned or, lighter skinned, lighter brown skin. And, again, I'm joined here by Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Sheldon, and I am grateful to have the time to speak with you today on your podcast.
Yeah.
I was excited too when you said that you had heard about me initially through the G Word film, the bits and pieces of G Word, the documentary that will soon to be released. But it is a great piece that has allowed individuals from around the country and around the world to know more about the broad scope of what giftedness is. And so I'm excited that you had a chance to listen, to learn more about yourself as a gifted individual through the G Word. I have to share that with Mark Smolowitz and his team, the G Word. He would love to hear that. I'm glad to be here. I just finished another interview earlier this morning with a Swedish journalist asking questions. So that was very interesting about gifted learners, high IQ gifted learners, and particularly those from populations that are typically marginalized and underrepresented. So that was a very, very interesting conversation. So I'm a little tired. I just will admit I'm a little bit tired. I'm also here at home with a new dog we picked up on Saturday, and getting used to his new schedule here in our home. And so it's been an interesting week while I'm for Christmas with this new dog in the house. But he's beautiful and he's just a real sweet character. So we'll be just fine in a few days. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making this time still. And I know new pets and can be it can be a handful those first few days. When you're welcoming them to the home, they're getting used to things. You're getting used to things. So definitely know that is still a special moment. Like I said, thank you so much for making time. So let's just kind of jump into things. One of the things I like to kind of talk with folks about is just kind of tell me a little bit about yourself, tell me about the work that you do, and whether or not you identify as neurodivergent.
Interesting. The word neurodivergent itself is quite interesting because it's taken on a very broad definition in the field. And I would say, I'm going to start with that if you don't mind. I would say, in some ways, I believe that I am, because I am a different thinker. My sense of the world and, how I fit into the world as a Black female gifted person, who has had experiences in urban areas in the North and here in the South, in the rural area. And because of also some health issues, I have to often think about, how is it that all of this makes me who I am. And so neurodivergent, I'm always about challenging the status quo. So in my view, it's going to take on, as we continue with this work, it's going to take on a different definition. And and I like that, as much as many people disagree with me on this, I think it's important for us to recognize as a field that we haven't done everything that we should do to identify and provide services to students who come from diverse backgrounds. I'm talking about ethnically and culturally diverse backgrounds, but also students from low-income communities. And because of that, because of that, what I did a few years back with another colleague, we started focusing this attention on what we call the 3E student, the 3E. And three, the third circle, or the third circle of that is being culturally diverse, is being ethnically diverse. And sure, we know that we are a group of people that represent, in some cases in the United States, 16 to 20% of the population, from coast to coast. And that we, many of us, most of us come from a background in the continent of Africa, and others, we have other, people who are multiracial, multicultural among us. So I do think that until we can really get a grip on the fact that our giftedness is our giftedness, and our giftedness sometimes is very different, and other times it's quite the same. It's quite the same. And so, so I'm going to stick with the 3E label for our children, our community. But again, as I said earlier, because of my varied background, geographically, particularly geographically, and because of health issues that I've had all of my life, I'd have to place myself in that category right now without going too far into it. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I embrace neurodivergency, neurodivergent people, because I have empathy, for folks who are different, who are differently wired, as we say, differently wired, and who approach the world in a different way. And sometimes we accept it, and sometimes we're not. So that's what we all have to continue to think about, and give ourselves the courage that we need so that we can become the best of who we are, of who we are, So my life as a gifted person began when I was a kid, like many of us. And I actually was content accelerated many years ago. So that I've been at this for a while. So my schooling started in the mid 20th century. That's when my schooling began in New Jersey, and I was actually content accelerated as a second grader. I went from second grade to third grade math, which wasn't a good experience for me at the time, because the math teacher wasn't so excited about having this little second grader join her class in the afternoons, So I didn't come away from that with feeling good about being smart, I felt like being smart was a burden to these other people. Some of the other people, when I say that, I mean teachers, some of the teachers I came in contact with. Within my family, I knew fully who I was. My family embraced it. We were low income, living in tenement apartments. Both of my parents worked, hard workers. There were 6 of us, Sheldon, and I'm the youngest of the 6, and 6 very bright individuals in the same household. So
wow, yeah,
I have to applaud my mom and dad for even getting through the experience of raising us. Man, I'm telling you, we have stories. We have some stories, but yeah. So I, again, from an early age, I knew that I was different than many other children my age in my community. I knew that I saw the world differently. I challenged the adults around me. I challenged right and wrong. When I saw that people didn't quite understand what morality and ethics was, even as a kid, I challenged that. And so I guess during that time, I was getting myself, conditioned, and some of that was self-conditioning, so that I could become a leader. And those kinds of roles, began coming to me as I was just like in middle school. I started, becoming a leader of this group, or a leader of that group, spokesperson here, spokesperson there. And the other children, of course, would look to me to be that person. And so, that started early in my life. And so I understood this on a personal level, but when I went into my training to become a teacher, I didn't hear about it. Nobody spoke about the the gifted students or the bright students in my classroom. Teacher
Mm-hmm.
education. And I was my first degree is a fine arts degree, by the way. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
artist. And so that first experience in art education was an interesting one, and I embraced that as my initial entry into education. So it came
Mm-hmm.
out of that, and I taught art, elementary education, art in a rural community for about I think about 8 years, 8 to 10 years, and then I was introduced. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Still here.
I was introduced actually to the field of gifted education by attending a conference at the College of William and Mary at the request of a principal. Nobody else
Mm.
wanted to go, so he said there's this conference going on, and we hear that the state is beginning to have conversation about, creating programming, local programming for gifted, bright students, and they need a representative from each district to be that person to go to, or director or coordinator. Would you be
Mm.
willing to do that, Joy? And I said, oh, yes. That was, it excited me. First of all, again, I'm always learning. I'm always thinking about the potential of the human mind, the
Mm-hmm.
potential to see things and to do things in a different way. And so I went to what was called the Richardson Conference.
Mm.
The room was filled with educators from across the state of Virginia, and then all of the experts, not all, but many of the experts in the field at the time. And their presentations resonated with me, Sheldon. They spoke about, intelligence, high intelligence, what that means. They spoke about how to teach towards high intelligence, how to do critical thinking skills in the
Mm.
classroom. And this was, again, this was a long time ago when I first started in gifted ed. And
Mm-hmm.
um, and within a short time, I actually took a course, a graduate level course, at the College of William and Mary, and I met Joyce Van Tassel Basker for the first time as my
Mm-hmm.
instructor in that course. Joyce was my mentor from that period on, my advisor, and at her encouragement, I entered the master's degree program at
Mm-hmm.
William Mary in gifted education. And she said, this program, I think would be a good fit, Joy, for who you are, and will, give you some opportunities that you would not have otherwise. And she
Mm-hmm.
was exactly right. So in gifted education, I would have to say I found myself, as when you get to a place where you feel comfortable, you feel like the conversation that's going on sounds like who you are and who you
Mm-hmm.
want to be, and so I do remember having that, that self-talk that this is where I belong, this is where
Right.
I belong.
Right.
And then not just I belong, but I can make an impact. I can change
Yes. Yeah.
conditions for people that look like me, you know,
Yes.
because at the Richardson Conference, I could count almost on one hand how many educators of color were in this huge conference room, listening to the presenters, and I thought, oh no, something is wrong here.
Right. Right.
Something is wrong here. And in time, I was able to get into the master's program, finish that degree. Actually, while I was in the master's program, I Joyce invited me to interview for a coordinator position for a Javis grant. They received one of the first Javis grants
Mm.
from the feds, for the federal government,
Mm-hmm.
to help identify service, again, identification protocol, instructional protocol, family community protocol for what we call at that time at-risk students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
among the at-risk students were, of course, students of color, Black
Mm-hmm.
students, brown students, students who also had special education, were receiving special education services. At that time, they were not being called twice exceptional, though. But
Mm.
those students came into this program along with the other gifted students We served them from several school districts, and it was a powerful, powerful experience, Sheldon. We
Mm-hmm.
we met these students. We worked with them. We had specialists doing the assessment. We wrote curriculum. We delivered curriculum, and then we also met their families on Saturdays and worked with their families. It was a powerful experience. But as with all grant programs, if you don't have continuing funding, um, then the
Mm-hmm.
program kind of dies where it is, But it didn't
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
necessarily die, because I know that we were able to help many people around the world, around the country, with this work, and it did make a difference. I'm sure that it made quite a difference, and it really, again, helped me as a scholar do more outreach, and I really, really became, more deeply involved, and figured out ways that I could actually carry the training that I received into other positions, and that's what I did.
Yeah.
But it was that program. It was my personal experiences as a gifted child, and also I think the programs that I was able to, have the experience of with at William and Mary that made the difference in my trajectory. It really
Yeah.
did. Hmm.
Yeah, that's you share so much really interesting stuff. I mean, from talking about, that experience in second grade, and them moving you up and it not being, the best experience so far as, how you associated being smart with, that change. It reminds
Hmm.
me for me, and I was just talking to my mom about this the other day. In first grade, they wanted to bump me up,
Hmm.
from math and science in particular.
Hmm.
And I've told this story before, but like they actually didn't identify. The teacher, my first grade teacher, thought that I was just being defiant. He's like, Sheldon doesn't care. Sheldon's like, and long and short is my mom realizes like, no, like he's bored, and they wanted to bump me up, but she chose not to do that at the time. And
Hmm.
I've always wondered about that because there is that dynamic of when you, and I forget the term they use nowadays or whatever, but basically, right, when you kind of have a child skip a grade or,
Yes.
that definitely is not as simple as, it's not a simple choice, right? There's
No.
implications for that.
Hmm.
Um, and then when you talked about having all those gifted minds in one house, I can only imagine family dynamics
Oh,
are
yes.
already know, a thing, and then you're talking about adding in all these passionate, intense, complex personalities and thoughts in one place. I'm sure, like you said, your parents deserve the gold star for that. But then as well, like you talked about, um, jumping into recognizing that this was an area of passion for you, that you could actually leverage this passion to do some really great work,
Mhm.
and digging into that. I mean, I'm sure that was, um, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure there was some challenges, some hurdles that you had to kind of, jump through. What can you tell me? Maybe a couple of things that you'd say um, were some challenges that you faced as you kind of got started with the work. Particularly, I'm sure back then, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, like they didn't have terms like twice exceptional and
Right.
neurodivergent and all this other kind of stuff. So,
Mhm.
what maybe some things that you ran into?
Well, again, when you think about the timing of my entree, into the
Hmm.
field, and as I told you about the experience, that I noticed it immediately at the Richardson conference, that there weren't very many people of color there.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
did happen to have a another mentor who worked on the same project. His name was Dr. James Patton, and Dr. Patton passed away recently. Who was a
Hmm.
special education professor, but he too was also very interested in the experiences of the challenges of Black children who were gifted and going into programs. And so it was his work and his nudging and encouragement for me as a Black scholar to say, this is not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to be easy because you're going to go places and you're going to find yourself alone.
Mm-hmm.
Alone too many times. You won't have a lot of colleagues. You won't have to, because they know they won't look like you. I mean, there'll be
Mm-hmm.
people who will say, "I want to work with you," or kind of champion your causes, but
Mm-hmm.
because they have a different experience and a different background, many times they won't respect you. They won't value
Mm-hmm.
you. And when they may talk to you on the phone, may hear about you for a period of time, but when they find out that you're Black,
Mm-hmm.
can you
Mm-hmm.
imagine? And when I
Mm-hmm.
became the state specialist for K-12 gifted programs, my colleague who had been there at the state level for many years, she took on the governor schools program. So I was strictly limited to K-12 programming, but what happens is that 2 or 3 times a year, the coordinators at the local level would have a meeting. Everyone would come together, and because I'm the representative from the state for those K-12 programs, I would be one of the speakers at the meeting. So the first time they met me, when I say they, I'm talking about the entire state
Mm-hmm.
group of state specialists or state coordinators for each of the school districts in Virginia. When the first time they met me, I could feel the eyes, and I could feel the
Mm-hmm.
ice,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
and I could
Like that's not
feel.
what we intended. That's not what we expected,
Listen,
right? Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, all I do is walk in the room, and I didn't come. I came to the meeting probably just about the time it was getting ready to start. So I kind of just stood in the back until I was introduced. And I did that
Mm.
seriously, Shelley, to be honest with you, I did that on purpose, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I could, kind of sense how they were going to feel as I walked slowly up to the front of the room and took the stage,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because so that part of it was very challenging. So here I
Mm-hmm.
am, a Black woman, at the state level, with experiences that were the same as many of them. I had only been a coordinator for about maybe 6 years, and
Mm-hmm.
and many of them had been in their school districts as directors and coordinators for many years, and
Mm-hmm.
many of
Mm-hmm.
them had had experiences with some of the scholars at the at the district, at the universities. And so some of those folk, for the longest time, had no respect for me,
Mm.
because no matter how much gifted talk I talked, I was
Right.
still, when I walked in the room, I was still a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Mm-hmm.
still a Black woman. And you see how I look. You see my
Mm-hmm.
hair. I've had my hair like this for about 40 some odd years. So
Okay. Okay.
I came in
Right.
looking radical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking
Mm-hmm.
radical, just being myself and speaking my language. I don't talk like if you don't mind my saying this, I don't speak like a bougie Black person. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
talk
I
the
know
way
exactly what you mean.
I've
Yep.
spoken all my life, and so for some of them, that was an affront, because they
Mm-hmm.
knew then that I would just be who I was, and I was going to bring something to them different than they had ever experienced before. I was going to
Mm-hmm.
help them look at all of those children in their classrooms that they were ignoring, that they
Mm-hmm.
were determined was not their responsibility, because they were not affluent. They were not middle class affluent. They were not, their parents were not the pushy parents. They
Mm-hmm.
could overlook these kids because nobody was speaking up for them. So I
Mm-hmm.
started
Mm-hmm.
some things at the state level that had not happened here before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able, however, though, to have allies in some of the school districts that were having difficulty, you know,
Mm-hmm.
getting their students identified, getting access to the state governor schools, even the white community out in Appalachia, in the western part of Virginia, who also had challenges getting access to the state programs, became some of my strongest allies,
Mm-hmm.
because their students are also being overlooked. The
Mm-hmm.
poor white students from the coal mining communities were also
Mm-hmm.
being overlooked and not deemed gifted in the same way that students were from, say, the Northern Virginia, DC area, whose parents were, you know, parents were middle class, upper middle class, many of them government,
Right.
employees. So that part of it, I found, I found joy in that, to be honest. Because I knew that there were these kinds of kids everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And as educators, we had already made up our mind who we were going to serve in these programs and who we were not. We made up
Right.
our minds.
Yeah.
No matter how many examples were being shown to them from
Mm-hmm.
history, that in all of these communities, there were so many people who had these positions who were determined that anyone who didn't look like them and didn't
Mm-hmm.
have the means that they had were
Mm-hmm.
inferior. Were
Yeah.
inferior. So
Yeah.
how can they be inferior, Joy, and be gifted?
Right. Right. That's the. Oh my gosh. This is. I call it the brain sparkles, but this has got me going because you talked about so many different things, and it's actually coincidentally I have a gifted friend that I've made who is from his family's from Appalachia, and so we've talked a bit about that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's so interesting to make that connection. So I'll just say, I call him Jay. Jay, if you're listening to this, just that really hit home.
Mm-hmm.
But I also really loved how you leveraged that opportunity to wait for people to, like, who's going to be this person who's coming up to the front, right? They're looking around and, oh, it must be this person over here in the corner. And then you say, okay, you walk up to the
Uh-huh.
front
Right.
and
Right.
completely blow their minds. And they're like, hold on, hold on, hold on.
Yes.
You the assistant or something, you know what I mean? Like, what are you,
Right.
right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Is this somebody's secretary coming up here?
exactly, exactly.
Face can't be. Can't be.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um, but I know that, like I said, that is such a challenge. And, there are so many constructs that people have about, like you said, from a racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic perspective about who has access to be called gifted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so fighting through those challenges, particularly in education, where like, a lot of this stuff is even more hard coded than in general society, because this is at the core of how we. I mean, this is how we kind of. I mean, I'll say indoctrinate, right? But this is how we teach our children
Mm-hmm.
how to kind of go forward. And so for you to be coming through, just as a Black woman, you're already, throwing a wrench in their plans. But then
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
be advocating, for this group of folks that, like you said, they're so easy to forget.
Mm-hmm.
They're the voiceless, and you're trying to give voice to them. Like, no, 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 no. Wait. Our voices are the ones that matter, not these folks. And so I really loved everything that you just, spoke to. Let's take a quick, this, not turn, but, like, let's talk even, at the core about, how do you recognize giftedness in others? I guess that's actually a good segue now that I think about it, because it's like, it's not this prototypical thing that maybe people might see in a movie, or again, that you would traditionally think of. How do we go about recognizing gifted children?
Well, again, in my experience, I started out as an elementary art teacher, and so
Mm-hmm.
what I found, and this is why it was a good transition for me from art to the field of gifted. What I found there were these children who thought differently than others. So if I presented a problem to them, they didn't come up with the same solution as the other kids did. And so eventually, once we made a transition, from my being this coordinator, the elementary teacher, and we started
Mm-hmm.
doing some assessment, some of those same students that I envisioned to be different thinkers were the
Mm-hmm.
same students that we eventually identified as gifted. It was really,
Mm-hmm.
really great. And we also did creativity testing at the same time. So, but gifted children usually have a more advanced vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to have teachers who are sensitive enough to listen to them, to hear them,
Mm-hmm.
and to believe that what they're speaking is, what's coming out of their mouths and out of their
Right.
minds is what's real.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
you have people who just say this can't be real. This kid is
Mm-hmm.
poor. This kid comes from here or there, and their
Mm-hmm.
parents do this or that. And you should hear him talk. He's really different. And he talks like this every day, all day.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
and these kids also would rather talk with adults or with older
Mm-hmm.
children. Um, and their interests though are different perhaps than other students, but they're also kids. We
Mm-hmm.
have the focus in our work on the social emotional needs of the gifted. I'm getting ready to teach a course coming up in January with Johns Hopkins. I've done this course before, and we talk about asynchronous development. So,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
these gifted children are they who, they physically sometimes and even emotionally, they may behave as a regular kid their own age, but their
Mm-hmm.
mind is at a speed, is moving so quickly and is
Right.
moving differently than other
Right.
children. And so it's really hard to manage and deal with them
Mm-hmm.
and not focus on their just being a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
when we sometimes have children become labeled as behavior problems, being
Mm-hmm.
disrespectful,
Mm-hmm.
or bored, and so they don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we really have to set up situations so we can draw the giftedness out of children and believe that they can be gifted too, Sheldon. That's
Mm-hmm.
for these students who are marginalized or underrepresented. There's a belief system that has to be at play here.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
have teachers who can see the sparks and hear and watch for the creativity, watch for the mental
Mm-hmm.
calculation. These kids who are mathematically gifted sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
become so strong at mental math that teachers don't believe them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They don't believe that. They think that they're cheating or you
Mm-hmm.
couldn't have done that. Or these
Mm-hmm.
students who become such remarkable writers. I had to advocate for a young man. He was, I think he was in high school. Yeah, he was in high school at the time and very, very bright.
Mm-hmm.
He's highly intelligent. So he was one of those high IQ kids, and he was in
Mm-hmm.
this specialized program. And he had written an essay as a part of an examination, and his teacher believed that somebody else wrote it. He just couldn't have possibly have written it. And this
Mm-hmm.
mother had to
Mm-hmm.
go in and appeal to the school administrator. And eventually she got in touch with me, and she got in touch with another specialist in the field. And we advocated for him, and we actually wrote, a letter to advocate for the student, through the parents,
Mm-hmm.
so the parent could get this information to the school administration. But they were bound and determined to fail this kid, to
I
to
yeah.
fail him, to
Mm.
fail him because
Mm-hmm.
they did not believe in his strengths. This is the
Mm-hmm.
same kid who had been identified as highly gifted. And I'm telling you, by IQ years ago as a
Yeah.
child,
Right.
and now he's at Yale. You hear me?
Mm.
The same
Mm.
child. I bet that teacher was squirming when she heard, I guess it was a female, I don't know, that this young man had been accepted to Yale.
Mm-hmm. No, first of all, that is a way too familiar story just across the gifted experience. But
Yes.
I know for me, again, there were times when I had teachers, doubt, like, you couldn't possibly do this. Like, I'm thinking now, I don't know if I've ever said this on any of my previous episodes, but one of the things that used to really irritate teachers is I used to do my math in pen because I did it all in my head.
Mm-hmm.
By the time it went to the paper, I already
Mm-hmm.
knew, like, there was no erasing needed,
Right.
right? And at the time, I wasn't trying to be a jerk about it, right? But it
Right.
was just one of those things where I was just like, I know this stuff. I can use a pen to do this work.
Right.
And teachers would get really upset about that, and wonder, well, how could you? Everybody else is, taking their time. They're over here struggling with this, and
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So again, those different experiences. Again, it's way too common to hear those things. I could tell a million different stories,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, no, that that's exactly right. And one of the other things I wanted to just touch on very quickly is, even going back to what you said earlier about how you speak, one of the things for me that I've prided myself on and that you're giving me, you're helping to affirm within me is, you know, I, I can use lots of great words. That was one of the things that my mom said was, kind of the first indications that I was a little bit different, as they say, right? But
Mhm, mhm,
um, I'm also somebody who, my family's from North Philly. My mom moved
mhm,
us to DC when I was young, and
mhm,
I didn't I went to some really nice schools, but
mhm.
at home was very different. And I speak in that way. I can do it all. But some
Right.
people would kind of be put a they'd be like, wait a second,
Mhm,
you're from here, right?
mhm.
I heard you talking like it's like, yeah, but I can still do all that other stuff too, right? I
Yes.
can I can use some of those fancy $50 words, as they say, right?
Right.
So
Right.
um so yeah, so let me quickly.
So
Oh, go
what you
ahead. Go ahead.
did, let me speak to this
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
What
Go ahead.
you're doing, and which is what we know that many Black children are very capable of, is you were code switching.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
that code switching is a skill. And
Mm-hmm.
again, many of our young people are very capable, very skilled, especially those who are gifted in an area of language. You have a propensity to big words and to the way people
Mm-hmm.
speak, and very expressive in their language. Those individuals are quite capable of code switching. And
Mm-hmm.
when I read the work of Dr. Freeman Hrabowski at the University of
Mm-hmm.
Maryland and his Meyerhoff Scholars Program,
Mm-hmm.
what we learned from his program many years ago, it was a program that was well funded, and that he brought in young Black men who
Mm-hmm.
were still in high school into this very highly sophisticated science program. And they were Black. They were from inner city Baltimore, and they brought them in, and they worked with these young men in these really great science labs, and had them mentored, by scientists, and these young men were quite successful as a result of the Meyerhoff program. Over
Mm-hmm.
time, the program changed, and they actually are now admitting students from other cultural groups and females. But one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that they found about from these students is that they were quite capable of speaking whatever the language was, or carrying themselves in a way that made them accepted wherever they were.
Mm-hmm.
So code switching was not just the language; it was the demeanor,
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
the
Absolutely.
ability to kind of fit in wherever you were, you know.
Right.
And so that's the other thing about gifted Black students that sometimes people don't recognize as being a strength or a
Mm-hmm.
trait, or one that is of any value. But for us, it is of
Oh,
great
absolutely.
is of
Yeah.
great value. And when we recognize as educators that those students who are highly gifted, and yet they don't have that capability, for their benefit, because they are
Mm-hmm.
Black, we want to teach them how to code switch, uh,
Yeah.
because they are
Yeah.
Black, because no matter what, we're still in America.
Right.
And when people look at us, they don't know how our brain functions. Don't even think about how
Yeah.
our brain might function.
Right.
Unfortunately, Sheldon, they don't even
Mm-hmm.
think about the fact
Mm-hmm.
that we could be brilliant scientists, that we could be, poets, we could be, we could be musicians.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even think about that, and so
Mm-hmm.
they're shocked many
Right.
times when they find out who our children really are.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that person, who is the gifted individual, they have to go through, all these different communities and all these different experiences, and try to be themselves, you know,
Right.
at the same
Right.
time, and accept their own giftedness. They have to
Mm-hmm.
accept their own giftedness, and
Yeah.
be able to say it's okay to be who I am. It's it's
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely okay. And as parents, we have responsibility of trying to keep our children out of environments where their brilliance is going to be bullied out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's going to be
Yeah.
bullied out of them. My son went through so much bullying as he was coming along. But one of the things that he and I talk every day almost, and he's raising two children, two very
Mm.
bright children. And he said one of the things that he said he'd like for all parents to know of gifted students, that they should never allow their child's giftedness to be bullied out of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's what happens when we're not paying attention as parents.
Right.
We're not watching, not that we're unintentionally, but
Mm-hmm.
that giftedness can rise up in situations, and the child can be victimized because of it.
Absolutely.
And we
Absolutely.
don't want that.
No.
God have mercy. There are things that we, would like to see change, but we definitely don't want our students to have their giftedness bullied out of them. No.
No, absolutely. I mean, and I think, speaking to this, and I'm so glad that I'm able to speak with with you about this, is that, you know, generally speaking, there's, talk about masking and how can operate in spaces so that people don't notice. And I know with gifted folks, that can be, it's certainly a kind of a broad experience. But as Black gifted folks, we have, there are more opportunities for us to feel like that's what we need to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, it's like, you know, every day
Mm-hmm.
I got two things every day I gotta risk being bullied for. I'm showing up Black. That's already gonna be a
Mm-hmm.
thing. Okay, do I
Mm-hmm.
want to also have to deal with this giftedness? Like, no, I'm gonna, so a lot of times people try to hide, but we want, my vision,
Mm-hmm.
is for the next generation of folks to be able to live much more freely in who they are. We don't want them to lose that, because there are things about us that make us unique. And just like I said, bottom line being humans, no human should feel like they have to spend all of their life, you know, carving out a piece of themselves just to make it through the day. Life,
Just to make
life,
it through the day. Right.
right?
Right.
Life throws enough at us. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so we've talked about a couple of different things, and again, I want to be mindful of your time. One of the things I wanted to make sure that we do talk about, or there's maybe a couple more questions, but let me ask you this: why do you think so many gifted people doubt that they're gifted, or do you think that it's a doubt that they're gifted as much as what we're talking about now? Like, there's you know um, so much pressure to kind of conform. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's probably both,
Mm-hmm.
the pressure to conform, but even more so, our children, our young adults are in environments where there's this persistence of inferiority. People are
Mm-hmm.
thinking less of them than they really are. People
Mm-hmm.
underestimate them. People, and don't, people who should be listening and watching for the intelligence, for the
Mm-hmm.
great ideas, for the innovations, for the people who should be listening and watching for the ways that our young people respond, that is different, and is so different that it's really remarkable. And something that's
Mm-hmm.
remarkable has the potential to change things.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
should be
Mm-hmm.
for that, but they're not. They're not.
Right.
They're not.
Right.
So if you're in it every day, every day, every day, every day, it's not that inside of yourself, somewhere inside of yourself, you may know that there's something different about you that you get.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have that affirmed on a regular basis,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have someone saying to you all day, every day, in some capacity, that you really, that was a great idea. I hadn't thought about it
Mm-hmm.
like that. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Who's not who,
Mm-hmm.
and of course we want for our parents and our community to affirm these young people, but sometimes they don't
Mm-hmm.
get it there either. But when they
Mm-hmm.
do get it there, the parent is sometimes has to be the one, the only one who's going to keep saying, don't you worry, you hold your head
Right.
up, you keep pushing, there's
Right.
something great out there for you. But because you are great, that
Mm-hmm.
you're the person that we know has the potential to change the course of the world, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And these kids really do, Sheldon. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like the individuals who are working with them, who are involved with them, see how serious this is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're
Mm-hmm.
not, and because they're not always being held accountable. They're
Mm-hmm.
not always being held accountable for the outcomes for these young people. And if they're in a
Mm-hmm.
typical school district, they're not. Because what we're doing, we're looking for outcomes for what the students that they think or they say are struggling students, outcomes
Mm-hmm.
for perhaps average students. But nobody's looking for great outcomes for that other student or that other
Right.
set of students. They're not.
Right.
And then so
Right.
many times their view is that this student is going to be okay anyhow.
Right. Right. Yeah. Right.
They're going to be
They'll.
okay anyhow. So we don't have to,
Yep.
spend any time, energy,
Yep.
resources, anything, trying to help them develop and grow. We don't have to
Yeah.
spend any time on it. But basically, this persistence of the idea of inferiority in the places where gifted people function,
Yeah.
causes them oftentimes to feel like, oh, I'm really not that gifted. I'm
Right.
really not that gifted. I'm
Right.
really not I'm really not as great as you say I am. They are underestimated at higher rates than other students are. And then
Mm-hmm.
that what we come to call the imposter syndrome sets in, more frequently,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
immediately. And if they don't have someone or some support to affirm the person that they are, the thinker that they are on a regular basis, they'll
Yep.
lose the sense of who they really are, what they could possibly do in the world.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Um, what are you most, like I said, we got about, a few more minutes. Like I said, I want to make sure I have so much to ask, but let me try to hone in. What are you most excited about as it relates to the future of how schooling, and again, whether that is the traditional schooling, a lot of folks are doing homeschooling or hybrid these days. What are you most excited about that will be improved for gifted and multi exceptional learners?
Hmm. I'm most excited. I would think, Sheldon, about the
Hmm.
increasing numbers of Black and Brown scholars in the field.
Hmm.
When we have more and more focus on equity,
Hmm.
and the focus on equity has led many young people to come into this area of education,
Hmm.
and the acceptance of these young people in their schools and into programs at universities. So when we look at the numbers, when we look at the data, and the data doesn't lie,
Hmm.
as compared to, say, 10 years ago, how
Hmm.
many Black and Brown scholars were focusing on programs or degree programs for and gifted and advanced learner programs. We see the numbers have increased. They
Good.
have increased. We do see, again, more acceptance of this notion that these students are gifted too.
Hmm.
That even in the worst of what we may call community or living conditions,
Hmm.
that we can find these students if we seek them out, and if we provide for example, the talent search and talent pool programming. We provide access to what we call advanced learner programming,
Hmm.
for them early on, and it has to be
Hmm.
sustained. Then the outcome for these learners will be greater than it would be had they only been exposed to a regular schooling program, a general education program with no access to acceleration, no access to mentors, in different fields, no access to teachers who understand, who they are, their
Hmm.
sensitivity. Um,
Hmm.
all of that I think is changing. It may have taken a long time, but we're
Yeah.
getting there. But I'm also still concerned, as anyone living in the United States of America should be concerned, also still very concerned about the high levels of anti-Black racism, in particular,
Hmm.
that our children
Hmm.
have to face. You know,
Hmm.
I'm very still concerned about that, and the numbers of educators that are engaging with these students every day who don't believe in them.
Yeah.
Who are
Yeah.
still discriminating and trying to set up programs that discriminate against them. So we have to be very careful and very mindful of being in this country, and how the systems that are outside of the school seep into the schools, you
Hmm.
know, and destroy lives of young people. And among those young people are these very, very bright individuals who need access to and they need support too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No. Thank you. That that is spot on, and yeah, I'm happy to hear that there are increases, and like I said, the work is your work is having impact. I mean, it's I'm those other people can't see this, but I'm actually wearing a shirt from the National Society of Black Engineers, and this is my I love this organization,
Mhm.
and the mission is really about increasing our numbers, right?
Mhm.
Because similarly, in the
Mhm.
field of engineering, there's
Mhm.
so many opportunities for us to be overlooked, and people are doubting that we can do the work, and
Mhm.
all these different things. And so we are similarly like, yo, we need more and more of us, and we need to be starting really, like you said, at like the K-12 age,
Right.
really that K-8 age, right, to
Right.
get folks to believe, like you talked about, like make sure that they have that belief in themselves. Because if you wait until high school to do it, a lot of them have already kind of given up,
Right.
and it can be really hard to kind of
Mhm.
change that trajectory
Mhm.
for them. So, um, last question. Um, can you tell me what are one or two things you wish people knew about navigating this world as a Black or otherwise marginalized gifted person?
Mhm. Wow. I wish that people knew how challenging it is to
Hmm.
be Black and gifted,
Hmm.
to be a person, who comes from a poor community and be gifted. How
Hmm.
challenging it is to go from the schooling environment into your community, into your home every day. And
Hmm.
how you often have to take on so many different behaviors, so many different, characters.
Hmm.
I wish they knew the impact of what is called intersectionality.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
really wish they understood that it is complex, and it's a
Yes.
daily experience for children who are have not typically been involved in gifted education services.
Hmm.
And I wish that they knew that it's a um, you know it's a moral issue,
Yeah.
for me, Sheldon. It's an
Hmm.
ethical issue,
Absolutely.
that if we take this on and believe in these young people, then the change that it can make for us as humans. And
Hmm.
I'm not just going to talk about in the United States. You hear me
Hmm.
speaking about having been here, been there, and these
Hmm.
kids are everywhere, and everybody is
Absolutely.
challenged by this. People are waking up now and realizing that they have to be accountable for gifted learners, regardless of where they come from.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it, that that piece of it is what is going to make the difference for all of us. Um,
Absolutely.
Bob Sternberg, Dr. Robert Sternberg, talks about what's called transformational giftedness, and that means
Mm.
that the gifted behaviors and the gifted outcomes are such that they can transform the human condition,
Mm.
or
Mm.
that we're looking at them in that way, or that
Mm-hmm.
we're using our giftedness in creative ways to make the world a better place.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
And
Okay. Well. Oh, sorry. Go. Sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and I literally I believe that,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done my work in that way, that I'm constantly thinking that if we can do a better job of identifying and serving these young people from
Mm-hmm.
what are called marginalized communities, or
Mm-hmm.
minoritized groups, then
Mm-hmm.
we will have met our obligation, and we've done
Mm-hmm.
in a way that it helps those people feel eh, that they're valued, that
Mm-hmm.
they are as they're being valued. And so we want Black and brown children and low income students to be able to navigate the world, but to do it in a way that they feel strong, that they're not
Mm-hmm.
being, put down and pushed down and kicked out and pushed
Right.
away, made invisible, or they're being told you don't belong here.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we, we,
Absolutely.
we don't want that for these kids anymore. That time is over, but
Right.
we recognize that it's still out there, so we still have some work to do.
Yeah.
We
Still
still,
lots of work to do.
yeah.
And to that end, tell us about, quickly, about your projects, and how they can, people can book you for speaking, or just how to stay connected.
They can stay connected with me. You can actually just write to me at my Gmail address. That's the
Okay.
easiest one, I guess.
Okay.
You have that one. If you could
Yeah,
just
I'll
somehow.
put it, yeah, I'll put it in the show notes for folks, and
Mhm, mhm.
go from there.
Yes, and I am continuing in speaking engagements. I'm teaching again right now. I'm going to teach this social emotional course at Johns Hopkins for the spring, but I've
Hmm.
accepted a teaching engagement at Quad Prep in March,
Mm.
where it's called Breakthroughs. They do a conference every year on
Hmm.
breakthroughs in the world of twice exceptional, and I'm very excited to
Oh
be able to
yeah.
speak about the Black twice exceptional, or the 3E people that
Yeah. Three.
that I am promoting in terms of looking at this group of people as having special needs as well,
Hmm.
and and so I'm available, to school districts. I'm doing training. Actually, I'm doing the piece on tomorrow with my co-editor of empowering underrepresented gifted students. We're doing some training in Virginia Beach City schools here in
Hmm.
Virginia, and I'm getting set up to do similar work in North Carolina. And because we become so adept at doing this work virtually,
Hmm.
my schedule can fit your schedule without,
Right.
especially if I don't have to do a lot of traveling,
Right.
So,
Right.
keep, have people reach out to me. I do
I
book studies if they like, or
Yeah.
I focus on a specific topic.
Hmm.
But I do want to continue the work, and continue having people understand our obligation to these young people and their families.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I so grateful for you this time. This is like a super honor. I will definitely make sure that other folks, again, if you've been living under the gifted rock, you don't know who we just had the time with. I'll put the information into the show notes for you. But Dr. Davis, again, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasant conversation, such a great one, and I'm hoping that maybe in the future we can circle back and have a follow-up conversation down the line.
Okay. It's been
Okay.
great, Shell. The questions
Yeah.
were impactful, and I appreciate your time as well.
Yes.
Take
Thank you.
care.
All right. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye.
you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of I Must Be Bugged. I hope you've learned something, became curious, and most importantly, felt affirmed by what you heard. Remember, this podcast is all about sharing compassionate narratives about who we are and how we contribute to the beautiful and necessary diversity of humanity. This is our place to unmask and just be. Don't forget to connect with me on IG at I Must Be Buggin', where I'm eager to see you share your thoughts, your experiences, and your stories. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Leave a review and subscribe. It helps others who are eager for community find our people. So thank you again for being a part of the I Must Be Buggin' community. I can't wait for the next episode. Until then, stay up and enjoy who you were meant to be. And remember, you're not bugging, you're brilliant.